The crash happened too fast for me to fully comprehend what was unfolding. One moment, I was driving down the highway, the hum of the engine a familiar background to the thoughts swirling in my head, and the next, everything was chaos. The screech of tires, the deafening crunch of metal, and then silence. I don't remember the exact moment I left my body, but when I became aware again, it was as though I had been watching everything from above. The scene below me, the wreckage of my car, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, the frantic movements of paramedics, felt distant, surreal. I couldn't feel my body, couldn't sense pain, yet I knew I was still there, detached yet strangely present. The disconnection was almost peaceful, but at the same time, it was unsettling. Then a light appeared. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but gentle, warm, like the first rays of the morning sun as it touches the earth. It seemed to surround me, envelop me in its calm. I was drawn toward it, not out of any sense of fear or urgency, but because something deep inside told me that this was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment everything would change. And then I saw him. There was no physical form to describe, no grandiose figure or powerful image, only a presence, a being of pure light, radiant yet soft. His presence was all encompassing, yet he stood there with an overwhelming sense of love and peace, as if he had been waiting for me all my life. His gaze, though gentle, was piercing. I felt he could see straight into my soul, beyond the barriers and facades I had built over the years. There is nothing to hide, nothing to defend. You are here, his voice said, not with sound, but with a knowing. I understood the words as though they were already in me, resonating through my very being. I could only nod, still in awe, still trying to grasp the weight of the moment. My heart beat steadily, but it wasn't the rhythm of panic or fear. It was something different, something beyond words. Peace, perhaps. Clarity. He smiled, a smile that radiated compassion. You have questions, and you will find that in this place, answers will come. But first, know this. Your life has been a journey, but it is not over. There is much more for you to understand. A shiver ran through me as he spoke. It felt as though everything I had ever thought to be true was suddenly being questioned. Not in a harsh or frightening way, but in a way that opened me up to a deeper reality. Something I hadn't known to look for, but something I had always felt was just beneath the surface. You've come here today because the time has come for you to understand more than what you've known. You are at a crossroads, he said softly, his voice like a whisper in the wind, yet I heard it clearly in the deepest corners of my mind. The world is changing, and you must be ready. But more than that, you must understand what is truly at stake. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I didn't know what he meant. Was it my life that was at stake, or was there something more? My mind raced with the possibility of what he was trying to communicate. Everything you've known in your life, everything that surrounds you, is in a state of transition, he continued. The systems, the structures, the comforts you relied upon, they are all shifting. People are heading toward a future they do not understand, a future that promises ease, security, and progress. But it is a false promise. It will lead them astray. His words hit me with a weight that was more than intellectual. It resonated deep within my chest, a physical sensation that felt like an alarm bell ringing in my heart. Technology, convenience, and control will deceive many, he said, his voice deepening. They will believe they are moving forward, but they are actually moving further away from the truth. The mark, the one you've heard about, is part of that deception. It is not just a symbol or a physical mark. It is an invitation to abandon what truly matters. I felt a lump rise in my throat. What did he mean? The mark? Abandon what truly matters? Until I came collapse on the ground. There is no time to waste, he said, his voice turning softer, more compassionate. This world is heading toward a place of great darkness. People will be tested and many will be lost along the way. But it doesn't have to be that way for you. You can choose differently. As he spoke these words, I felt something in me stir, a mixture of fear, confusion, but also hope. I wanted to understand. I needed to understand. This was no longer just a spiritual encounter. This was something far more urgent, something pressing against the very fabric of my being. I took a deep breath, gathering the courage to ask the question that had been forming in my mind since the moment I left my body. What do I need to do? How do I prepare? The figure smiled gently, as if he had been waiting for me to ask that very question. You must prepare not just with your actions, but with your spirit. You must build faith, for it is your shield. You must seek the truth, for it is your guide. And you must understand that what lies ahead will require more than knowledge. It will require strength, discernment, and the willingness to stand firm in what you believe. He paused, allowing the words to settle in. I felt as if I were floating, but also rooted to the ground in a way that defied logic. This wasn't a vision. This wasn't a dream. This was real. The world will call you to choose. It will offer you comfort and convenience. But in those moments, you must remember this. There is more to life than ease. There is more than the temporary comforts of technology. There is a truth, a deeper reality that you must prepare yourself to face. And that truth is more important than anything the world can offer. I looked into his eyes, feeling the gravity of what he was saying. But how? I whispered. How do I prepare? He did not answer with more words, but instead the world around me seemed to shift. The light around us brightened, becoming more vivid, more alive. I felt my own being expand, as if I were no longer just a body, but part of something greater, something eternal. And then the light began to fade, and I felt myself drifting back to the wreckage, back to the world I had left beyond. But I was different, changed. The last thing I heard before everything went dark again was his voice. You will know when the time comes. Trust yourself, trust your faith. And with that, I woke. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the car, no longer in that place between life and death. I was somewhere else entirely, a realm that seemed to exist beyond time, where the past, present, and future flowed together as one. The air felt different, as if it had weight to it, pressing gently against my skin, wrapping around me like a soft, invisible blanket. But it wasn't just the air that was different. It was the very essence of this place, the stillness, the profound sense of knowing, the feeling that everything I had ever sought to understand was suddenly laid bare before me. I stood there in awe, unsure of what to do or how to move, when the divine figure appeared again. He was as radiant as before, the warmth of his presence filling the space like sunlight on the horizon. But this time his eyes held something new, a deeper intensity, as if he was about to show me something crucial. I could feel the weight of his gaze, and in that moment, I knew that this next part of the journey would change everything. Come, he said softly, as if he knew my thoughts. You are ready. Without a word, I followed him. There was no need for an invitation. It was as if his presence alone pulled me forward, guiding me through this strange, timeless space. As we moved, the world around us began to shift, like a moving painting, layers of images unfolding one after the other. I could sense a growing urgency in the air, as though the very fabric of reality was unfolding in ways I had never imagined. We stopped in front of a vast screen that seemed to materialize from thin air, stretching endlessly before us. On it, scenes played out like a film, a vision of the future. I watched in silence as images of bustling cities, glowing screens, and intricate networks of technology filled the space before me. At first, everything seemed familiar, even comforting. People walked along busy streets, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their devices. Everywhere I looked, there were advertisements promising convenience, ease, and connection, new technologies that seemed to improve lives, to solve problems, to bring about a better world. The divine figure stood beside me, watching the vision unfold with a solemn expression. I turned to him, seeking understanding. What is this? Why are you showing me this? His voice, though soft, carried the weight of truth. This is the world that is coming, a world driven by technology, a world where every part of life is connected, controlled, and monitored, a world where people are offered convenience, security, and comfort, but beneath the surface is a world of deception. I watched, my heart sinking as the images continued. The technological advances began to take on a different tone. People's lives were no longer just enhanced by technology, they were entirely dependent on it. I saw machines seamlessly integrated into every aspect of life, from the workplace to the home, from healthcare to entertainment. Society was becoming more connected, yet paradoxically, it seemed more isolated. People were physically close but emotionally distant, their lives dictated by algorithms, their identities tied to digital systems that promised safety but delivered control. But then, as a vision shifted, I saw something darker. A new system, an implant, a mark began to appear in the lives of people. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. At first, it was something small, an identification chip embedded under the skin, a convenient tool for easy transactions, a way to keep track of personal data. It promised to make life easier. People lined up, eager to embrace this new technology, aware of the consequences. It was offered as a way to unlock security, to avoid the fear of losing anything, to make life effortless. The image morphed, and I saw more people lining up one by one to accept the mark. Some were hesitant, unsure, but most were eager. The promise of a life without worry, without the need for cash, credit cards, or even passwords was too enticing. The mark was seen as a solution to every problem, the answer to insecurity, to fear, to chaos. But as the vision continued, the consequences of this seemingly harmless decision became clear. Mark did not just control the transactions of their lives, it controlled them. It monitored their every action, every thought, every interaction. People who accepted the mark found themselves unable to live without it, unable to function in society if they chose to resist. The mark became the key to everything, a constant presence that tethered them to a system that promised freedom, but only delivered enslavement. And then the consequences grew darker still. Those who resisted, those who rejected the mark, were ostracized, abandoned, left to face a world that had moved on without them. I saw families torn apart, communities fractured, all for the sake of something that had once been sold as a simple convenience. Trust between people dissolved, replaced by fear of being left behind. The divine figure turned to me, his face somber, his voice grave. This is the choice that will be placed before humanity. This is the false promise of a better world. It will not bring peace. It will bring division, enslavement, and suffering. I felt my breath catch in my throat, a mix of fear and disbelief. But why? Why would people accept something so dangerous? He met my gaze with a deep compassion. They will not know it at first. They will be deceived by the promises of ease, of security, of peace. The system will make it seem like the only way forward. People will want to believe that everything is going to be fine, that the mark is just a harmless tool to make their lives better. But they will be blind to the spiritual cost. I took a step back, overwhelmed by the gravity of what I was witnessing. What happens to those who accept it? The divine figure's gaze softened. They will be disconnected from their true selves, from the divine. They will become slaves to the system, their souls entangled in a web that promises safety but leads to destruction. The more they rely on the mark, the more they lose their connection to what truly matters. The true path will be obscured by their dependence on this false security. I stood there in stunned silence. The weight of what he was saying settled over me like a heavy fog. It was almost impossible to fathom the depth of the deception, the consequences of the choices ahead. Yet, in the midst of this, I felt something stirring in me. It wasn't fear, it was a kind of quiet resolve. I couldn't ignore what I had seen. I couldn't go back to the way things were, pretending that everything would be fine. The words of the verse were definite. So when I finally got to campus, I decided to do a Bible study, and the words were really helpful. My name is Rose Lizzie, and I'm coming now to talk to you. The time to prepare is now. You must understand the choice that lies ahead, not just for yourself, but for others. Your path will not be easy, but it will be true. As the vision began to fade, I felt a profound sense of clarity, though it was tinged with sorrow. I knew that what I had just witnessed was only the beginning. There was so much more to learn, so much more to understand. And yet, I also knew this: no matter how dark the future may seem, I had been shown a way, a path that will require faith, wisdom, and discernment. a path that would not be easy, but one that I had to walk. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. There was no turning back now. The vision faded, but the weight of what I had seen lingered in the air, pressing on my chest. I was no longer sure where I stood or what was real. I had been shown the consequences of humanity's choices, but I couldn't yet grasp the full extent of how it would all unfold. The divine figure, ever steady, remained beside me as the world around us seemed to shimmer and warp, like I was standing at the edge of a great precipice, watching the world move inexorably towards something I couldn't stop. His voice, calm and compassionate, broke through my swirling thoughts. The acceptance of the mark will not happen all at once. It will be gradual, subtle, hidden behind the promises of convenience and progress. At first, it will seem like a blessing, a natural evolution. People will be convinced it is the answer to everything that has troubled them. I turned to him, my mind reeling. But how? How would they not see the danger? He nodded slowly, as if expecting the question. The mark will be introduced as a solution to the world's most pressing problems. It will promise an end to poverty, an end to conflict, an end to suffering. It will be sold as a tool for peace, a way to unite humanity in the face of crises. People will crave security, crave certainty, and the mark will be presented as the only way forward. The vision shifted again, and I saw it clearly. A world on the brink of collapse, the economy fractured, social divisions deepening, and trust between people eroding. Crisis after crisis, climate change, political instability, economic disparity had torn at the fabric of society. Desperation filled the air, and the promise of the mark of a world where all could be monitored, managed, and controlled would be seen as a beacon of hope. People suffering from the chaos would look for an answer. Governments, corporations, and influential leaders would push the mark as the ultimate solution. Imagine, one of them said in the vision, a world where we no longer need to worry about crime, fraud, or even the simple need for cash. A secure and efficient society where everything is connected, where everything is taken care of. It sounded so simple, so logical. As I watched this vision unfold, I could see how easily the world would accept it. People who had been struggling, yearning for any relief, would see the promise of the mark as their salvation. Those who question it would be labeled paranoid or outdated, dismissed as enemies of progress. The mark would become a symbol of modernity, a symbol of being part of the future. And before long, those who resist it would be left behind, alienated from the world they once knew. People will not be forced to accept it. The divine figure's voice broke into my thoughts. They will choose it. They will embrace it because it will promise them something they desire more than anything. Control over their lives, the illusion of certainty in an uncertain world. But what about the ones who resist? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What about the ones who see through it? The divine figure's gaze softened, but there was an undeniable sorrow in his eyes. What made you decide to stay? Gertie asked. Those who resist will be few at first, and they will be tested in ways you cannot yet understand. As society grows more dependent on the mark, the more difficult it will become to live without it. It will be tempting, like a drug. The conveniences it offers will make people forget their true need for spiritual connection, for faith. The world will promise them that they can live without sacrifice, without struggle, but it will lead them astray. A vision bloomed before me, showing the gradual shift in society. First, the mark was small, an identification chip, just like I had seen before. Then it began to infiltrate more deeply into people's lives. What started as a convenience for buying goods, accessing information, or receiving medical care turned into something far more intrusive. It tracked your every movement, analyzed your thoughts and behaviors, and soon it began to make decisions for you. The line between choice and compulsion blurred. People didn't know where their own thoughts ended and where the system's influence began. At first, it seemed harmless. The mark became a part of everyday life, an accepted necessity like a smartphone or a credit card. But as time passed, the promises it had made, security, efficiency, happiness, began to unravel. The more people relied on it, the more they lost sight of what truly mattered. The systems that were supposed to protect them ended up controlling them. They became slaves to the technology they had once embraced. And as their faith in the mark grew, their faith in the divine diminished. They stopped seeking connection with each other, with their communities, and most tragically, with God. The divine figure turned to me, his expression serious yet filled with compassion. The mark is not just a tool of control, it is a spiritual weapon. It will wear down your faith, your ability to discern right from wrong. It will teach people that everything they need can be found in technology, that they do not need God, that they do not need each other. It will erode their connection to the divine. I felt my heart tighten. The vision had shown me how deeply the mark would infiltrate every aspect of life, how it would eventually become a prison, a gilded cage. But how can people avoid it? How can they know the difference? He sighed deeply, his voice soft but filled with an urgent truth. People must be prepared. They must understand that the true battle is not fought with weapons or systems of control. It is fought within the heart. It is a battle of faith. Only those who remain vigilant, who cling to their faith and their connection to the divine, will see through the lies. Those who build strong communities of believers, who help each other resist the pull of the mark, will have the strength to say it. As his words echoed in the vast emptiness around me, a deep sense of responsibility began to settle in my chest. I could no longer ignore what I had seen, what I had learned. The people in my life, the ones I loved, would soon be faced with the same choice. The subtlety of the deception, the way it would creep into their lives so quietly, so convincingly, was something I could not ignore. The divine figure stepped closer, his gaze never leaving mine. You will not face this alone, but you must be strong. You must teach others, help them see what is coming. The choice to accept or reject the mark will not be easy. It will cost everything. But those who remain true to their faith, who prepare their hearts, will not be lost. As the vision began to fade, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity, an understanding that the path ahead would be difficult, that the world would soon be divided. The test of faith would come not in grand gestures, but in the small, seemingly insignificant decisions. People would be tested in the quiet moments of life, in the choices they made about what to believe, who to trust, and where to place their faith. I knew then that I could not sit idly by. I had to share what I had seen. The world was about to change and people needed to be ready. The vision dimmed and the stillness of the moment seemed to settle deep into my bones. The divine figure's presence was unwavering, a calm beacon in the midst of everything I had just witnessed. The weight of the truth was heavy, but there was a profound sense of peace within him, a peace that felt like it could fill the emptiness inside me. His voice broke the silence again, gentle but firm. What you have seen is not the end, but the beginning of a much greater challenge. It is easy to despair when faced with such darkness, but the path ahead is not without hope. You must now prepare not only yourself, but others as well. I felt a surge of emotion, fear, doubt, and a deep sense of responsibility. Prepare for what? How can we prepare for something so vast, so overwhelming? The divine figure smiled softly, his eyes full of understanding. The first step in preparing is to build your inner strength. You must focus on your spiritual growth. In the coming days, the world will offer countless distractions, countless temptations to stray from the path. But it is in strengthening your faith, in deepening your relationship with the divine, that you will find the strength to endure. I took a deep breath, trying to comprehend the enormity of what he was saying. My mind kept returning to the mark, how it would slowly infiltrate lives, promising comfort and security, but ultimately leading people away from the truth. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that preparing for such a future couldn't just be about resisting the mark. It had to be about something deeper, something more enduring. Again, you must build a spiritual foundation that cannot be shaken by the storms of life, the divine figure continued. This is not about the knowledge of doctrines or the mastery of rituals. It is about cultivating a heart that knows how to listen, how to be present with the divine. In the end, it is the heart that will carry you through the darkness. His words resonated deeply within me. I had often sought answers in the external world, facts, logic, and the things I could see and touch. But now I understood that the true strength will come from within. It was not the world's systems or its promises of convenience that would sustain me, but the unshakable connection to a source of love and truth that transcended all the lies. Focus on developing this connection, he urged. In moments of doubt or fear, turn inward and seek the divine presence. Trust that you are never alone, that I am with you always. It is through this relationship, through this faith, that you will find the courage to face what is to come. The courage, says? The divine figure paused, as if allowing me time to internalize his words. Then he spoke again, this time with a new urgency in his voice. But spiritual growth alone will not be enough. You must also prepare practically. The world will grow more chaotic, more unpredictable. You must be ready, not only in your spirit, but in your body and in your mind. The words felt like a call to action, pulling me out of the serenity I had been enveloped in. Practical preparation, I asked, still unsure what that truly meant in a world that was becoming so technologically dependent. What can we do when everything around us is changing so fast? He nodded as if he had expected my question. In the face of technological control, you must reclaim your autonomy. Learn skills that cannot be easily replaced by machines. Build a life that is rooted in self-sufficiency. The mark will promise convenience, but it will strip away the very essence of what it means to live freely. Grow your own food. Learn the old ways of survival. Cultivate the practical skills that will allow you to stand on your own if the time comes. I saw a flash of images. Families gather around hearths, people working together to tend to gardens, communities sharing resources and wisdom. These images were so far removed from the sterile, impersonal future that the mark seemed to promise, but they filled me with a sense of warmth, a purpose, and I could see the beauty and simplicity in living a life that was not dependent on the convenience of technology, but on the strength of human connection and the land itself. The world will try to tell you that convenience equals progress, that technology will save you, but true progress comes from the wisdom of the past, from building relationships with the earth, with each other, and with the divine. You must begin now to cultivate these things. The weight of responsibility grew heavier. This wasn't just about my own survival. It was about the survival of communities, of families, of faith. It was about understanding that the future I had seen wouldn't be shaped by the technology that promised ease, but by the strength of the people who could still see beyond the lies. Build communities that will support each other, the divine figure continued. In the coming days, when people begin to question what they have chosen, they will need a safe place to turn, a place where the truth is upheld, where love and compassion remain at the center. You must be those who provide that refuge. I felt a deep sense of clarity, as though a veil had been lifted from my eyes. The mark would not be the only challenge. The isolation, the loneliness, the lack of connection, it would be just as dangerous. People would be drawn into the system, but it would be the ones who held fast to community, to love, to faith, who would thrive. You will be tested, the divine figure said softly. But if you are spiritually prepared, if you are practically prepared, you will find that you can endure. You will not be swept away by the tide of the world, but you will stand firm. You will be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for those who are lost. A deep sense of peace settled within me as I realized the truth of his words. The future was uncertain, but there was a way forward. It was not about fighting against the storm, but about finding the center, about creating a place where truth and love could still reign. And I had a role to play in that. We all did. The time to prepare is now, the divine figure said, his voice becoming more distant. You must take what you have learned and share it, not just with your words, but with your actions. Build your community, strengthen your faith, prepare yourself, and then reach out to others. In the end, it will be your love, your connection to the divine, and your ability to stand together that will see you through. And then, just as quietly as he had appeared, the divine figure began to fade, leaving me alone in the stillness. But I was no longer the same. I had a mission, a purpose. The road ahead would be difficult, but I knew now that I was not walking it alone. The lessons I had learned would guide me, and I had the strength to share them with others. The preparation had begun, not just in the physical world, but within my own heart. The stillness lingered, a profound silence that seemed to stretch on for eternity. The divine figure stood before me, his presence radiant and unwavering, a source of light in a world that felt increasingly shadowed. I had walked through visions of a future fraught with deception, darkness, and the subtle but persistent pull of the mark. But now, as he stood there, the weight of it all seemed to lift. Just for a moment, I could feel something stirring deep inside me, something that whispered of hope, of something greater. You have learned much, the divine figure said, his voice filled with compassion and finality. But there is one more thing I must leave with you. The air seemed to shift as he spoke, and I felt a sense of solemnness settle upon me. It was as though the weight of the universe itself was pressing in, urging me to listen closely. The path ahead will be difficult, and the darkness will grow deeper. The world will be tested, and many will be lost along the way. But even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of revival. I believe them. Revival. The word resonated in my chest, echoing through my soul like a distant yet certain promise. I closed my eyes, allowing the weight of the message to wash over me. I thought of the world I had seen, the society that would slowly slip into the grip of the mark, the people who would be deceived by its promises, the challenges that awaited, and yet, even in the face of all this, I felt a flicker of hope. There will be those who lose their way, he continued, his gaze steady and filled with both sorrow and understanding. But there will also be those who find their way back. There will be those who will remember the light, who will seek the truth, and who will stand firm even as the world around them crumbles. I nodded, my heart stirring with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. The world would not be an easy place, but it was clear now that the final victory was not a matter of survival alone. It was about the soul, about holding on to the faith, even when the world tried to tear it apart. It was about remembering that, even in the darkest hour, there was always the potential for light to break through. The key to revival, the divine figure said, lies in your faith. It is the faith that holds you steady when everything else seems to be falling apart. It is the faith that allows you to see beyond the lies and illusions, to trust in the promises of the divine even when the world mocks those promises. Faith is what will carry you through. His words sunk deeply into me, and I understood them now more than ever. The future may be uncertain, and the challenges may seem insurmountable, but the strength of faith could transcend all obstacles. The world's shifting tides, its lies and temptations could never take away that inner strength, that quiet knowing that something far greater was at work. Know this, he said, his voice softening with love. You are never alone. There will be times when you feel isolated, when you feel as though you are the only one left standing, but you are not. There are others like you, others who have been called to stand firm in the truth. And when the time comes, you will find each other. Together, you will build a foundation of love, of faith, of strength. I felt the weight of his words, and with it, a deep sense of peace. I had not been shown the future just to be burdened by it, but to carry the message of hope that will ultimately guide others through the darkness. This wasn't just about surviving the coming trials. It was about witnessing the revival that could follow, the restoration of faith and community that would rise from the ashes of a broken world. The divine figure's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw not just a figure of light, but a reflection of something deeper, a presence of boundless love and infinite patience. The world will grow darker, yes, but those who walk in the light will not be defeated. There's always a possibility of redemption, always the possibility of a new beginning. I felt his gaze settle upon me, and I understood. The mission was clear now, more than it had ever been before. It wasn't just about protecting myself or surviving the coming storm. It was about sharing this message, about being the light that others could find in their darkest hour. My purpose has shifted from being one of survival to one of service, to being the living embodiment of the truth I had learned. You are not to fear what is coming, the divine figure continued, but to prepare. Prepare your heart, prepare your spirit, prepare your life. And when the time comes, be ready to guide others, to remind them of the truth they may have forgotten. His words were a call to action, a call that reverberated through my very soul. There was work to do, much work. The world I had seen may have been full of deception, but there was another world, a better world, that could emerge from the ruins. It would take time, and it will require patience, love, and a deep commitment to faith. But the possibility of revival was real, and it began with each individual choice, with each moment of steadfastness in the face of overwhelming odds. The divine figure stepped back, his form beginning to dissolve, but his presence remained. The time has come for you to return, but you do not return empty-handed. You return with the knowledge of what lies ahead and the power to make a difference. Go, and let your life be a testament to the truth you now know. As he faded away, I felt myself gently returning to the world, to the body that had once been mine. The peace I had felt in his presence lingered within me, like a steady pulse in my chest. But as my awareness returned to the world, I realized something had changed. I had been given a mission, a purpose that transcended the fleeting concerns of the world. I had been called to share the light, to prepare others for the darkness that will come, and to remind them of the hope that will always be present even in the midst of the greatest trials. I woke, but I was no longer the same. The world awaited, but I was ready to walk the path, no matter how difficult, with faith as my guide and hope as my constant companion.